Hello, and welcome to God in Film, the podcast where a Christian and an atheist dive into the best that cinema has to offer and see if we can find any parallels with the gospel or any other Bible stories. I'm literary critic and man the high priests warned you about, Giles Gough.
And I'm librarian and mechanical donkey, Julia Hall.
And today, for our Easter special, where we look at some media that is explicitly Christian, we'll be looking at Season 4 of The Chosen, the first multi-series depiction of the life of Jesus Christ, seen through the eyes of his followers. If you want to hear what we've had to say about previous seasons, you are welcome to have a listen to those episodes earlier in our feeds. And as for Season 5, well, at the time of recording, the first episode is in cinemas now, but the rest of the series hasn't dropped yet. So, Julia, what did you think of this series?
I liked it. I mean, The Chosen is not always super engaging for me, I think, because I can't be like, oh my god, that's that guy from the Bible. I mean, I am a bit like sometimes now, like when they had the flashback to David and, you know, his first son that like dies and he's fasting while he's ill. I forget which episode we talked about.
Yeah, we talked about That Ends With Us. Yeah.
Oh, I know this one. So that was a nice sort of like, you know, DiCaprio moment. But as a filthy atheist, sometimes it is a bit like, I think if I knew scripture, this would mean a bit more to me than it does. But I mean, we had some corkers this season. Lazarus being a big one, which is, it's weird because whenever I hear the word Lazarus, I always think of like, there's that one Doctor Who episode about the guy who's trying to get like eternal life, and like it's usually some horrible sci-fi, you know, immortality potion or something. So it's nice to kind of see the OG Lazarus. And I didn't realise that going the extra mile originates with this, right? With the story of the Romans. Kind of press gang.
Yeah, so that's
definitely where the phrase comes
that's
from?
not in scripture. The Romans press gang thing. That is invented. I believe the line that about if a man asks you to go a mile with him, go 2. I think going the extra mile. That's from something Jesus says in Matthew 5 verse 41. I think it's like from the Sermon on the Mount.
Oh, right, okay.
So they've already established it quite early by this point, where he says, if anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with them 2 miles. Give to anyone who asks you, and do not turn away from the ones who want to borrow from you. So there's that lovely point where you just see that kind of tipping point where the Romans see them as kind of almost less than human, and it's they're having fun kind of forcing them to carry their stuff. And then when they keep on going, you see them stumble. Matthew stumbles, and then one of the Romans helps him, and then one of them takes the helmet off Jesus' head. It's that thing we have to remember, that Jesus came for the Romans too.
Yes.
And it's an uncomfortable truth that I wish I could ignore, but Jesus came for the people who you think are terrible, as well as came for your people. You know?
Yeah, I think that especially shows with the Gaius this season, because he's kind of gone from, you know, a bit suspicious of Jesus, doesn't really trust him, thinks Matthew is an absolute fool to give up his, you know, cushy tax collector job, to fully believing and, you know, becoming a follower when Jesus heals his son. So that's a nice kind of arc. I think I like it a bit more when the Romans are there, just because then I feel a bit more, you know, historically
white
grounded.
people, I know them.
Yes, no, maybe no, that must be it. Like, oh, good. People with a vast empire. I feel close, you know, to a vast and problematic empire. These are my people, man. What have the Romans ever done for us?
What have the Romans ever done for us? Hey.
But it's nice to have that. I don't know. It just feels a bit. It's nice to have that historical element. I think it makes it just feel a little bit more real for me, I suppose.
Yeah, and that's. I have a similar thing. I can get a little bit lost in the Old Testament. It feels a bit weightless, for want of a better phrase. But when it's the Romans, when you bring the Roman Empire in, it's like, okay, well, I know what's happening here and over there, and I know what was going on in Britain at the time. Does that make sense?
Yes.
You know?
Yeah, no, that does make sense. You're like, it kind of grounds it and puts it in a specific kind of place where we can give it context, and it just feels a bit more real.
Definitely. Now it's time for Julia's Facts.
Ba-ba! I don't have as many facts as I usually do.
We have covered this show extensively.
Yeah, the ones that I found, I think I've got a couple of good ones.
Okay.
So I think last time when we did season 3, I talked about the huge set that they built. This thing is over like 900 acres. It's got temples, it's got marketplaces, it's got shops, it's got interiors, exteriors, a lake, everything. But while the construction crew were making the set, the art director, BJ Foreman, invited them to write their favourite Bible verses on some of like the unfinished walls and the bits that weren't quite done yet before they were painted over. And the crew like loved this idea so much that they basically kind of any bit of sort of unfinished half-built stuff they would write their favourite Bible verses on. But of course, so we can't see that when we watch the show. But underneath, all the paint and the stucco and the dirt and stuff are all these Bible verses written by the crew that are meaningful to them.
I love that,
which I think is really lovely.
Yeah, it's like scripture is literally infused into the show.
Literally, genuinely, literally. One of Come and See, which is the production company around this.
Yeah, they've switched.
Have they changed now?
So originally it was Angel Studios, who were the I think possibly like the distributors. I think Loaves and Fishes might be the producers, the production company.
Yes.
And it used to be Angel Studios, and then there was kind of a bit of a parting of the ways. So that's why I think there's we get new credits at the start of each episode.
Yeah. But one of the goals for The Chosen is to have the show translated into 600 different languages, so that it can be accessed all over the world. At the moment, they've gotten to 53.
Yeah.
One of which is the official language of Madagascar, the specific name which escapes me, because they had one person write in and was like, please can you translate it into this language, because I would love to be able to watch this in Madagascar, which I think is really cute.
Yeah.
Like making sure that everyone can access it. The other couple, one of which I was watching a talk show that they do with the cast after each episode, and they had Jonathan Rumi on, and this is a brief spoiler warning.
Okay.
If you've not watched the season, turn back now. But Jonathan Rumi actually knew that Raymer was going to die all the way back in season 2. When I was watching the interview, the editors put the scene over so you could kind of see what Jonathan Rumi was talking about. But there's a bit where Raymer's talking to her father about wanting to go and follow Jesus, and obviously he's really like not happy with the idea, he's kind of against it, and Jesus is kind of watching on, and you can really see this sort of sadness in his eyes. But Rumi says there's a moment where he looks up as Jesus, and that is the moment that Jesus also knows what is going to happen to Raymer, which is crazy to me. Especially, I don't know, he must have kept that secret as well that whole time, but to know all the way back in season 2 what was going to happen, I would not be able to keep that secret, quite frankly. But I think maybe go back and watch that scene again and seeing it with that new light.
We are going to talk more about that in the Finding the Faith in the Film section, because I have some thoughts, and another contributor who's going to be joining us later on this episode will definitely have some thoughts.
But that's most of my my facts. Although I was going to talk about, I've actually seen Jonathan Rumi before, and I didn't realise it because I was looking up his sort of acting credits. And he's done a lot of stuff that is not super Jesus coded to me. He's got a lot of video game credits actually. So he's been in Call of Duty. He's been in Saints Row, which is for those of you who don't know, is a very Grand Theft Auto kind of genre of game. He's been in XCOM, which is a military shooter kind of game, and Death Stranding as well. But I know him from voicing a villainous vampire in an animated show called Castlevania Nocturne, which just I kind of need to, because I watched that and I watched The Chosen and I went, something I know I've heard this before, and I googled it, and now I kind of want to go back and watch those 2 episodes that he's in again, because it just doesn't quite compute in my brain. Of Jesus playing, one of the more evil characters in the Castlevania show.
And I was thinking about this because they started The Chosen like several quite a long time ago. And I think it was 2017 originally, wasn't it, that the first series
Yeah, it's been going a while.
came out. And it's because of that sort of funding model of we'll make the next season when we've got the money for it approach. It's taken longer. But if you think about it, sometimes, and you notice it particularly when they have to swap out actors for whatever reason. Okay, there's a line from like the Wu-Tang Clan where RZA basically says to the rest of the group that he's just formed, basically, give me 5 years of your life, and I'll make you stars, And I keep thinking about this, like the commitment you've got to, as an actor, like this is a show you're going to be doing for a long time. We really need you. It's a massive commitment for people. Also, so do you remember Sarah Michelle Gellar really worked hard to not be seen in public, like stumbling out of clubs or smoking or drinking or anything, because she was a role model as Buffy. And Jonathan Rumi must have to be delightful to every single waiter he meets, no matter how incompetent they are.
Yeah, like just he's kind of a bit synonymous with Jesus for me now. I think when I think of Jesus, I picture him.
So it's interesting you say that, because my friend Jen said she didn't want to watch The Chosen too much because she was worried that Jesus would just start to look like Jonathan Rumi in her mind. And it sounds daft, because you don't want to end up sort of accidentally idolizing somebody.
Yeah, you don't want to end up like that one grandma who has a framed photo of Obi-Wan Kenobi in her house because she thinks it's Jesus.
Exactly. And I've had things recently where, when I'm trying to sort of seek God and I'm trying to like work out what he wants to say to me, and I had this picture of Jesus kind of like wrapping his arms around me in a hug from from behind, like picture like big strong arms,
like a bro hug,
bro hug sort of thing, just holding you so you don't fall apart. And I remember him telling me like everything's going to be okay, you are fine. And that Jesus that seemed to be talking to me looked a lot like Jonathan Rumi in that moment. But the thing is, right, if Jesus didn't look like Jonathan Rumi in your head, he'd probably look like Jim Caviezel, or he'd probably look like Robert Powell, or he'd probably look like any other actor who you've seen being Jesus in a piece of media in the past. Or if he didn't look like that, he'd look like those blonde-haired, blue-eyed Jesuses that you see, Caucasian Jesus, that you'll see sort of on stuff. So, and I know this will sound daft, it kind of doesn't matter what Jesus looks like to you, And if he looks a bit more authentic, a little bit more Middle Eastern and a bit more Jewish, that's fine by me, The flip side to it, though, you sent me a little video of Jonathan Rumi was in his full Jesus getup, holding onto a coffee cup and his mobile phone while sitting on a mechanical donkey for filming. And I don't know what to tell you, Julia. That really helped me in a lot of ways, because it helped me to distinguish between actor and role.
Especially period actors, I adore. Like, I love the juxtaposition between somebody in their period outfits. You're looking at Game of Thrones actors listening to music on their iPods, or like someone on the set of Bridgerton with their mobile phone. It just, I don't know, it just scratches an itch in my brain. That is really cool. So just seeing Jesus with his little like, recyclable coffee cup and his smartphone on the back of this fake donkey was just perfect for me.
Brilliant.
That's all my facts. That's pretty much it.
Thank you, Julia. Those facts were amazing as always. Hey guys, it's Editing Charles here, and we've just dropped our U2 bonus episode on our Patreon page. In it, I hear from a minister and U2 superfan, Reverend Tim Edworthy, who talks us through his 40-year fandom with the greatest Christian rock band that never was. I'm also joined by the host of the RE podcast, Louisa Jane Smith, who loves the band so much she actually did her dissertation on them. Here's a clip.
In some ways, again, like a lot of people of my age who were brought up in the Christian faith, U2 became something of the soundtrack to my life. And and probably helped me explore the Christian faith more deeply through the lyrics. And there's always this thing, I think, whenever U2 brings out a new album, well, whenever, I hope they will bring out a new album. It's been 7 years since the last studio album, but those two are of a sort of religious disposition will be poring over the lyrics and seeing where are the God references, where are the Jesus references, however tenuous they are, and very often they're not that tenuous, but seeing what that's saying about Bono's faith in particular, but maybe other members of the band too.
If you want to hear the full episode, you can go to www.patreon.com/God in Film podcast and sign up to our Bishop Waller Bridge tier. You can also check out our God in Gaming episode. We have longer, extended cuts of interviews and uncut episodes on there where you'll hear it first and in full. Now, ladies and gents, we have no guests today because honestly, we have had some fantastic top shelf journalists talk in the past, and I don't think I was going to top that. For long-time listeners, you will know there is one rule on God in Film. One rule that we hold sacrosanct, and that is that Claire Gough, the First Lady of God in Film, gets to do whatever she damn well pleases on this show. And to this episode is no exception. So Claire, hi baby, how you doing?
Hey gorgeous, how you doing?
I did say to her, darling, you don't have to be on this episode if you don't want to be. I know you're stressed. I know there's lots of things going on. If you want to just sit this one out, she's like, no, I want to come and talk about the episode.
I want to do the fun stuff. So yeah, here I am. Hello everyone.
So yeah, this possibly won't be the most in-depth analytical episode because it'll be largely me and Claire just obsessively fangirling.
Yeah. We have 2 small children currently on Easter holidays, so
we're gonna.
It's busy here.
Yeah, it is what it is, guys.
Yeah. We'll do our best.
Cool.
Okay, go for it, babe.
Now it's time for Finding the Faith in the Film.
Da 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 da.
Fantastic. Okay, so let's just get this over with. Most characters we see in The Chosen have a significant amount of plot armor to them.
Yes.
Yes, we do know Jesus is going to die, but he'll get better. And we know what's going to happen to Peter, and we know what's going to happen to so many of these characters. Mm-hmm. But we also know it's probably not going to be happening anytime soon. We've got a little bit of time. Mm. So when they killed Rayma...
Yeah. And it makes sense. They had to invent a new character in order to be able to kill one of them off for dramatic effect, I guess.
Yeah.
Like, nobody's really died in The Chosen, really. Like, a few people have, but, like,
I mean,
it's been...
John the Baptist died, but we knew that was coming. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, we knew that, yeah.
And John had such a beautiful ending. You know, that moment where they put his head on the block and he sees the lamb sort of frolicking outside. And like,
he was pretty okay with it. He's like, I've done my thing. This is like a really dramatic way to go out, which he would have loved. He's like, yeah, this is really emo. I'm gonna like get my head chopped off and put on a plate. Yeah. So you feel like he'd fulfilled his calling, and he was like, yeah, let's make this cool and dramatic.
Like, he was okay with it. He didn't have a betrothed and people to cry about. Well, I mean, people still cried about it. But, he was fulfilled. He'd done his purpose.
Yeah,
it was,
Raymer had not even begun, which makes it really, really sad.
Yeah, it's absolutely heartbreaking because that scene where she's come up with a system about how to get around the fact that she doesn't have her father's permission.
Yes.
And there's that moment where it's like, you have to offer her a gift, but I don't really need a gift. It's fine. It's not important.
Yes.
And then he's explaining this to Jesus, and he says, well, I don't really need to get her a gift. She said it's not important. And everyone's like, whoa.
It's like, no, shh.
There's that bit where Peter comes in and he's like, it's okay. I'll Jesus sort of says to him, you'll explain it to him. It's like, I've got this.
Yeah.
Fellas, when the wife says she doesn't want anything for Valentine's Day, don't believe her.
Yeah. See,
get
this works the opposite way in our relationship because we we were really skint. We were really busy. We were both like, let's just not do presents for Valentine's Day this year, okay? And then Giles over here goes and gets me presents. And I'm there just with my little card, feeling like a total numpty. So, thanks for that.
I can't even remember what I got you for Valentine's Day.
Got me a very cool jumper that I'm wearing right now.
Oh yeah, you got your Jane Eyre jumper. Yeah. So she had an individually made Jane Eyre jumper, and there's like. I did her a Valentine's Day card. I made it myself. It was like a picture of me and Claire sort of done up like Highlander, like the characters in Outlander, and had little romantic quotes in it. And listeners, if I tell you the filth that was on Claire's Valentine's Day card, we would lose the clean rating on this episode.
I got him a very inappropriate Valentine's Day. Well, it's because our 4-year-old is going to be able to read soon, so this is really the last year that you can get away with something like that. So let's make the most of it.
Yeah.
Darling, let's just say I waited for you for a long time. Okay?
Yeah, everybody's heard about how thirsty you were,
sweetheart. No, that's not what I mean.
Okay.
I mean, I used to think I was very thirsty, and then Julia reset the scale.
Okay.
Oh, come on. I mean, I only talk about Gillian Anderson some of the time.
Sure. Yeah. And then it's Michelle Yeoh the rest of that. I'm surprised you haven't figured out, like, which one of the apostles is like the hottest and which one you'd go for first.
Oh, that's a tricky one.
No, it's not.
Honestly, that weirdly, like, I haven't, because it feels a bit like... I don't know. It feels a bit... I mean, is this bad to say Jonathan Rumi? He's a very handsome individual, but I feel like you can't thirst over Jesus. I feel like that's wrong.
No, you know what? Back in medieval times, they used to do this quite a lot, I think.
You asked, Giles.
I did.
No, medieval Christians, like, especially nuns, were all about thirsting over Jesus.
Oh, yeah. Hildegard von Bingen. Crazy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we should maybe move on from this conversation.
The point I was trying to make, my darling,
yes,
wife of my youth, is that I spent a long time sort of waiting for you to come along, and now that you're here, I'm going to spoil you rotten. You cool with that?
I'm so cool with that.
Brill. Okay.
That's cool. Yeah.
Awesome. Also, you gave birth to both of my bowling ball-headed children.
Oh,
so
Lordy, yeah. My body is ruined. So yeah, give me all the presents. Anyway, we're getting off topic somewhat here. Let's bring it back.
Anyway.
The train has left the station. We're no longer on it.
Yeah.
This is mostly going to have to be cut.
Yeah.
So can I tell you what I felt about Rima's death?
Yeah.
I thought it was a good choice to have a character die and then have to deal with all those questions, because realistically, like, I know we don't hear about it in the Bible, but like, a lot of people died back then. There was a lot of, mortality was high, people died, and I don't imagine that Jesus healed all of them. So I feel like that is a question that would have been raised at some point. Like, one of the disciples would have had a family member or a friend who would have died.
One of the disciples.
One of the disciples.
You let that go,
I did. Yeah, I hoped I got away with that.
Wow, too
One
soon.
of the disciples. So I feel like it is a question that would have been raised, but I just wish it hadn't had to have been quite so dramatic, and like one of the pretty female characters sliced down with a sword just seems a bit unnecessary. But
I think it was quite easy, a bit easy to see coming when they're he's giving her a sundial and they're talking about we want to spend together, we want to be together forever, is the same energy as someone being like, oh, we'll talk about this when I get back.
Yeah.
See that now, and now it makes perfect sense. But at the time, I thought this was a meditation on what it's like to follow Jesus and be married in the first century church, and I thought that's fascinating. Because their marriages, if they had any, get so heavily sidelined, and that's one of the things that The Chosen does so well from the jump is talk about the way wives dealt with this stuff.
Seeing them figuring out their relationship around following Jesus was really interesting. I did think the what do they call it, chaperone scenes were quite hilarious when you got someone in the back just going
Whose turn is it to chaperone? Well, we tend to cast lots for it. Okay. Well, why can't you do it? Because I don't want to.
Yeah.
Well, why can't you do it? Well, you're very lax and very permissive.
Yeah. And it made it worse because you'd had all of that laughing and comedy about it, and the lightness and the these two kind of thing that you'd brought to the group, and then just the tragic, devastating ending. It was really rough.
It's like Romeo and Juliet, isn't it? Which it's like a comedy right up until the moment that it's not.
Yeah.
You know, and it's heartbreaking. The way it's used, though, do you remember when her father says, "I cursed you, Jesus of Nazareth, and I'm going to spend my time telling everybody how terrible you are."
Yeah.
The way they use it to make you believe how the ill feeling builds up around him was fantastic, because whenever you see any sort of productions of the sort of trial of Jesus or like the passion or the last few days of his life, you're like, well, hang on, why could anybody have anything bad to think or say about Jesus? And the way it kind of uses that as a plot thread, I thought was beautiful.
Yeah. It's also like getting into like Reddit theories about certain people and where, is this character going to be this parable? And honestly, to read it, it's just, there's something wild about that. But they were talking about having this death scene, and obviously Cavaney being, understandably upset about that. And then people are kind of going, is he then going to be one of the people specifically to testify against Jesus, and that's we're basically being given kind of further context as to why that's going to happen. So I don't know if Cavaney is specifically mentioned in the Bible or not, or whether he's
aware of.
I mean, as best I can tell, Rayma and her father and her family are whole cloth invented characters. One of the things that's been enjoyable watching this show is the way that characters who serve a plot point and become characters in the Bible. So, for example, Gaius becomes the centurion with the ill servant, and that was a beautiful interpretation as well.
I've seen theories that Atticus is going to be the Roman who stands
the cross,
Jesus's cross, and says stuff. And there's some people like, I don't think it's going to be him. And some people are like, I've reread this and I'm 99% sure this is going to be this guy. And it's really fun to watch Bible discourse on Reddit.
It is funny you say that, because he struck me as such a fascinating character. He's basically a Roman investigator, isn't he?
Yeah, he's like Roman MI5.
Yeah, he's kind of a
and
PI.
the way he seems to be able to speak truth to power to pretty much any Roman in any position is fascinating, because it's such a hierarchical system. The idea that you can have one guy come in and be like, that's rubbish, and I had exactly the same thought recently, that this guy is too important for him to not have a role later on. So that's where my money would be on him being the sort of the Roman at the foot of the cross who realizes all too late that this is the Son of God.
Yeah, he's got to have a role somewhere, hasn't he? Yeah. When you mentioned about how can you have anything negative to say about Jesus when it gets to the point of the trial and stuff, I found the scene really interesting when Mary pours the perfume on Jesus' feet and the reaction. And when he's talking to the Pharisees, it's so frustrating because it feels like it has such a potential to be a positive interaction with those Pharisees that come to visit him, Shmuel and someone else.
Is it you?
Yeah. And it's just like what Mary does is amazing and beautiful, and I love the way Jesus defends her. I think that's fantastic. But I could also very much see the other side of it. Kind of, I really understood. Shmuel has devoted, I think it was him that was speaking, I get them mixed up, has devoted his life to studying the Torah and to his faith, and he's like, are you just going to, he's wondering why Jesus appears to be disregarding all of these rituals and traditions and everything that he spent his life kind of figuring out and following it, and that seemed to have been so important to the faith up until that point. And, with the benefits of hindsight of, 2,000 years of Christianity, it's very easy to say, well, obviously Jesus was right. But actually, if you're there at the time, how do you know? It's like...
Yeah, if there's something you've been doing for years and years and years, and some guy is like, you're a dingus, you shouldn't do it that way, you're gonna get defensive at best.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean?
And then some woman comes in and pours like some really expensive perfume on his feet and starts wiping them with her hair. You're like, well, that's inappropriate.
Didn't you think it was interesting that they made it the Mary of Mary and Martha fame rather than Mary Magdalene? Because typically it's meant to be Mary Magdalene who's the Mary in that context.
I don't know if we actually know that. I don't think they know who it is. I don't think it's specified. We might have to check.
If only
this.
we had
And
some
my
interwebs
phone
to check it.
And my phone is
To the
dead.
internet.
Let's see what Dr. Internet has to say. Here we go. John 12, 1-8. 6 days before the Passover, Jesus therefore came to Bethany, where Lazarus was whom Jesus had raised from the dead. So they gave a dinner for him there. Martha served, and Lazarus was one of those reclining with him at the table. Mary therefore took a pound of expensive ointment made from pure nard and anointed the feet of Jesus and wiped his feet with her hair.
Okay.
The house was filled with the fragrance of the perfume, but Judas Iscariot, one of his disciples, he who was about to betray him, said, "Why was this ointment not sold for 300 denarii and given to the poor?" He said this not because he cared about the poor, but because he was a thief, and having charged the money bag, he used to help himself to what was put into it. Jesus said, "Leave her alone so that she may keep it for the day of my burial. For the poor you have always with you, but you do not always have with me." So this is the John 12, 1 to 8
version. That's what they based it on. Okay.
Yeah.
Is the hair like significant in that, like wiping with your hair?
Yeah.
Because that seems very intense. Like, because or at least in the show, a lot of them have like veils and head coverings and like and just they wear a lot of cloth, right? So I feel like I don't know. The hair feels intentional to me somehow.
Yeah.
But I don't quite understand the significance of it.
So I'm not speaking from a point of expertise here, but in a lot of history, and I think in this time as well, having your hair covered was necessary because having your hair uncovered was
a sign of immodesty.
Yeah. Really quite an
so
immodest,
there is
a shocking
in
thing
the scene,
to do.
In that scene, there is a line where Jesus says something to the effect of, there was nothing in the scriptures about women having to cover their hair. That's just tradition.
Yeah.
You know?
But it was very common, like even in even throughout most of Western history,
it's
women have
practical
covered
as
their
well.
hair.
It keeps your hair clean.
Yeah.
And you can just
I think it's just I think it's just quite an intimate act, and it's very humble. If you're using your hair to like wipe his feet, which have been quite dirty, it's a real sign of humility, I think, because you're dirtying yourself to clean him, and quite intimate.
What's fascinating is that Mary and Martha, they get it. They get what's about to happen, and his followers don't. And it's just
the women seem to get it much more.
Get it quicker. Yeah. And I found this a struggle this season, because all the things that we liked about The Chosen, the idea of a Jesus who is like soft spoken and gentle and all the rest of it, starts to recede as you start to get like a Jesus who is angry and frustrated with his followers and worried and scared. He's like, you can relate to this, the idea that you've trained your students to do a thing, the final exam is coming, and they still don't get it. They're still saying, so was Shakespeare born in Victorian times? Those kind of things. I want to drag it back to Rayma just for a moment, because we as Christians have dealt with the issue of, why doesn't God heal me? Why did God take this person that I loved dearly and heal that person? And it's when he's right there in front of you, it's got to be 500 times harder. I remember two friends of mine who had a cancer diagnosis, and one of them was from church.
Who both had a strong faith.
Yeah, both incredibly strong faith, and one saying like, well, praise the Lord, God has healed me, and that's faith, that's fantastic. And the other one, I'm not going to say any names, but the other one who said, yeah, well, it doesn't look like that's what's going to happen for me, and it looks like I'm going to meet Jesus, and I'm really excited about that. And just
And she died.
yeah, and obviously she died. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the difficulty of that,
Yeah.
you know, and the fact that Jesus doesn't explain it. There's nothing he says that makes him better. And the way they talk about Thomas, the way they talk about losing Thomas,
Yeah.
like losing an incredibly important asset.
Yeah.
I thought that was lovely. And okay, this is going to be an incredibly flawed comparison. Okay, so get ready, because you could probably
I'm ready.
you could drive a bus through these. But if Rayma's not there, if Jesus isn't healing her, then there's a reason for that, you know, and we never get to find out the reason this side of eternity.
Yeah.
You know, and do you remember the episode of Doctor Who with Jodie Whittaker where she went back to Montgomery, Alabama, and saw Rosa Parks get arrested?
I didn't watch that season.
Okay,
I'm really
all right.
Sorry. Honestly, at that point,
The point I'm trying to get at is there's that scene in that episode, which you didn't watch, where the Doctor and her companions know that Rosa has to be arrested.
Yeah.
That Rosa has to be arrested because that's going to spark off the Montgomery bus boycotts. That's going to make segregation on buses illegal, which is then going to end up with segregation being deemed illegal. And they know all that, and you can tell it's still killing them to see an injustice happen right before their eyes. And that is it's a paltry example, but that's the only example I could think of where you see a bad thing happening and you know why the bad thing has to happen, and you know that you can't do anything about it because it serves a greater good.
Yeah.
And that's what Jesus has to be like all the damn time, and that must be exhausting.
Yeah. I think I did see an interesting opinion on, I think, Reddit again. Some people didn't like how distant Jesus seemed sometimes in these moments, where the one that struck me actually more was when he goes to meet Mary and Martha after Lazarus has died, and Mary especially is just absolutely weeping on the ground, and he stands up, he just stands there in front of her. He doesn't sort of like kneel down or get close to her on her level or anything like that, and that just seemed a bit incongruous to me. And the same when Rayma dies, he doesn't sort of, he just kind of stands there, and I just expected more kind of physical comfort.
Yeah,
I'm not saying he would like.
He's definitely different this season. I think you can sense a lot of the frustration and a lot of the, and I think because he knows that it's getting close now to the end. You know, is it partly sort of seeing, taking some of the safety wheels off and kind of seeing what the disciples are going to do? Like, are they going to kind of fill in the gap? Do they understand? You know, like on the bit where he's trying to explain to Thomas, and Thomas is like weeping, and he says, like, I'm sorry, I don't understand, I don't get it. It's just, I
feel like you're missing the one thing that happens after that. Shortest verse in the Bible. Jesus wept.
Yeah,
you know,
he does,
he literally, he looks at Thomas, he looks at Mary, he looks at Martha, he looks at his mother, and it's just too much.
I do love
and
that
he
moment.
bursts into tears and he weeps, and he knows he's going to walk down the road and he's going to resurrect his oldest friend, and he knows, how can I put it? It's like a publicity stunt. It's staged in such a way so that they can see, and it'll solidify the fact. And this is the thing that's fascinating. It's the journey that we saw Peter go on the season before of you are God, and you are the Son of God, and I worship you, and you didn't do this thing that I really needed you to do, and that those two things can be true at the same time.
Yeah. It felt in that moment that he wasn't just crying because Lazarus had died. He was crying because this next step that he was going to take was going to change everything and start him down a road that he can come back from, and that was leading to the crucifixion. I don't know how I feel about that, because I like the idea that Jesus was crying because people were sad and his friend was dead.
I suppose both could be true. Like, I think honestly, Jesus had a tough time this season. I think
it's gonna get tougher, guys.
That's
the one.
A lot of people are dying. But then also, like, that from his perspective, that also is like for a greater purpose, right? Otherwise, why would he not go all the way back and try and resurrect John the Baptist, for example? So I think there's a lot of reasons really why he's got reason to be sad.
This is something that occurs to me. Like, I was re-listening to our first episode on The Chosen, where I interviewed Sam Hales, and Sam was saying that he believed it was going to be like a 7-season show.
Yeah.
So when you find we're at season 5, and we're already at the Last Supper, I feel this sort of sense of anxiety, because I'm like, I thought we would have more time.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna lie though, seeing Jesus flip them tables in the trailer, I never thought I would be like hype for a Bible show, but it's my favorite thing is like Jesus, lovely chill guy, go 2 miles guy, just absolutely going wild
every time
these tables, man.
Jesus walks into a temple now, I'm thinking, oh, Julia's gonna love this bit.
So but I think there's supposed to be 8 seasons of this. I think they wanted to do, right? So it just feels like if they're gonna do 8 episodes a season and the Last Supper's next season, it feels are they gonna
I think they can they can really stretch out the bit leading up to the crucifixion.
You can, but also, do you want to? Is the question? When you don't want audiences to be like, come on, get on with it.
I do wonder if they will extend it past. Well, I'd like them to obviously spend a decent amount of time on the bit after he's risen, because I feel like that's always skipped over.
Yeah.
And
there's no narrative tension after that point, is there?
But it's like that's some of the most interesting time when it's like, okay, he has just come back to life. What is the nature of this? How are people going to deal with this?
How can people be
walking?
walking?
He actually kind of hang around after he's risen?
He hangs around for
weeks like at least.
Like 40 days, is it something like that?
I don't know. I can't
Mind
remember.
you, I also learned that 40 days is
kind of an expression that means
an expression
a
rather
while.
than at one point, like Simon and John and Peter James and John and whatnot go back to fishing because they don't know what else to do, and there's one point where he literally cooks them breakfast on the side of the thing and calls them over. He's appearing to people left, right and centre. Listen, when we get there, it's going to be amazing. I want us to move over onto the one next thing. So Julia, you saw the last episode where he's coming into Jerusalem. Yeah. Can you remember what the event was called?
This is Palm Sunday, right? It's what we would call Palm Sunday?
It'll become Palm Sunday, but the Jewish people don't call it that. They call it it's something else.
Oh.
What is it they're all going to Jerusalem for?
It's not for Hanukkah. Hanukkah's already happened, right?
I'm
really bad at this.
No, it's okay. Listen, it's okay. It's a thing called Passover.
Passover. Yes, of course. Okay, yeah, I'm on board now.
So, do you know what Passover is?
I read, I think it was a Tumblr post once, and it was like a rundown of every Jewish festival is like, they tried to kill us, they failed, let's eat. So I feel it's some. I dimly remember doing Passover at school, but this is the one where the traditional food, you have that big plate, right? And there's like the salt water that represents the tears. And I think, isn't one of them parsley or something? I really remember like as a kid like drawing in the different foods. But is Passover when Moses leads them around about the time when Moses? So
I'll talk you through this bit so you know what it is. So first of all, I love that bit where they're sort of acting out little things of Alexander the Great.
Worst. Boo, yeah.
Alexander the Worst. They all jump in. I thought that, like, there's, how can I put this? I feel like you could drop the apostles down in roster of the acting society back in Bangor, and they would have fit in fine. You know,
honestly, that kind of has like a bit of a, you know what I mean when I say beach episode vibe to it.
Yeah,
these sort of kind of humble episodes where everyone's just
you could imagine, like, go out into the village and find me a cult that has never been ridden, and tell them that Giles needs it for his next show. You know, there's a lot. It turns out there's a lot of transferable skills from being in an amateur dramatic society and being an evangelist. It seems like. So, do you know the 10 plagues?
Yes.
A quick rundown is that all the people, the Israelites, are all sort of stuck in Egypt. Moses keeps asking Pharaoh, "Let my people go." Pharaoh is like, nah, and
great musical number.
Yeah, there's lots of this kind of back and forth, and the 10th plague, if I'm right, is the death of the firstborn, isn't it? You know,
death of the firstborn son.
Death of the firstborn son. So
because girls don't count.
Pardon? Because girls don't count.
Honestly, I'm happy to let it fly in this specific.
Yeah.
Like
on this occasion,
let this one go. Lads, this is all you. You know? And what I'm paraphrasing here, but what God says to Moses is, tell your people to sacrifice a lamb, put the lamb's blood above the door of the house, and the angel of death will pass over you. And that's where the phrase Passover comes from.
Or Passover, if you say it properly.
Yeah, or Passover if you're a very posh southern colonizer. I don't know how you do it.
You love it. Shut up.
Yeah, I do. Moving on from the legally mandated Giles and Claire flirt with each other part of the episode, we've talked about the idea of human history being one grand narrative where one thing links to each other, and God being the author of that narrative. And we've talked about the idea of like foreshadowing before, about how the Israelites going out from the capture of Egypt into the sort of freedom, and that being a representation of how human beings can go from being in the slavery of sin into sort of the freedom of salvation, all that sort of stuff. There's a similar thing going on here, right? Where Jesus isn't just coming to Jerusalem on Passover because, oh wow, it worked out that way.
Because it's so fun and a good time all around.
Yeah. Jesus is, we keep hearing, he's the Lamb of God. He's the Lamb of God. John says that, it gets said. Yeah. So Jesus is the Lamb of God that is going to be sacrificed for the sins of the world. And the fact that he's going to be sacrificed at Passover is a way of kind of, Jesus went there deliberately at that time for that. So
also because there were lots of people there he could preach to and witness and so on and so on.
Yeah.
But so, also, so the comparison of the sacrificial lamb at Passover, when they would sacrifice them, and the original one that saved them from the angel of death, is also Jesus being the sacrificial lamb, saving us from death.
So if you almost kind of see like if you see Jesus' sacrifice as being almost like the center point of human history, it's like everything that goes before it kind of foreshadows it, and everything that comes after it is a
echo of it.
An echo of it, yeah. And I sort of think that's quite beautiful, you know. The last thing I wanted to talk about was Judas.
Flipping Judas.
So, if you haven't, guys, stay till after the exceptionally long credits of the last episode, because there's bloopers and outtakes in it.
Oh, I didn't see those. I was gonna say, is there like a post-credit scene? Are they gonna marvel?
There's like a post-credit scene.
Oh my god!
It's not like a post-credit scene. Nick Fury doesn't ask Jesus to join the Avengers, although
oh my gosh, though, imagine.
Cool. Loki would have been forgiven and dealt with his issues in like
Yeah.
20 minutes, and everything would have been fine.
Next
you know?
episode of Jesus and the Flacken.
Jesus, fuck it. There's like lovely bits where Jesus is looking out at the lambs coming in, and Jonathan Roumie's like, I could really go with some lamb with mint sauce right now. Judas is there going, I'm going to betray you so hard. And they're still doing it. They're keeping the regular voices, you know?
Yeah.
So Jonathan, Jesus, there's like, I'm really thirsty. And then Judas like, I'm thirsty for vengeance. What? Check it out, because it's so funny. And I think sometimes you could this show can become such a big, if you're a Christian, this show can become such a big deal in your head.
Yeah.
So seeing the actors just being actors and just being people is brilliant.
Yeah.
But
Hold on, Julia was going to say something
Go
there.
for it.
Oh, honestly, it was just anytime I think of Judas, there's this meme that I saw, and it'll be like, Jesus is like, one of you is going to betray me tonight, and Simon's like, is it me, Jesus? And he's like, no, it's not you. And Matthew's like, is it me, Jesus? And he's like, no, Matthew, it's not you. And Judas is like, is it me, Jesus? And Jesus is like, is it me, Jesus? It's some silly little audio that like does the rounds on like TikTok every like few months, but it just brings me so much joy.
Oh, he's such a PR guy. He's such a business guy. And
So this is the point I was going to get onto. I
Yeah.
find myself thinking that people without much of an education might find it easier to follow Jesus than people with one.
Yeah.
And because we heard in that scripture from John where John calls him what's
like
he
he's
say?
a thief,
He's like,
and he's been
and then
like,
Judas,
this is a thief,
who was
man.
a thief, you know, and like he really, John really kind of sticks the boot in there, you know.
Yeah.
But it occurs to me, like, when Judas joins this group, you can tell he's passionate, you can tell he's sincere, and from Jonathan Roumie's performance, you can never really tell whether Jesus knows that Judas is going to betray him or not. It's so ambiguous. I love that, you know, because you don't know if that distance from Jesus is part of the thing that makes Judas want to betray him or not. But when Judas comes into this thing, he has so many ideas, and he has so many things like, we could just use money to pay somebody to wash our clothes for us, and that would be a more effective use of our time, because we could then go off and do this. And then Z, the Simon the Zealot, is like, there's a reason we've got to do this. And then there's like, we could just go and buy some grain. We don't have to thresh it out. And he's so desperate to make a contribution.
Yeah.
He's so desperate for his contribution to be seen and to be valued that he doesn't take the time to really see what organization he's a part of.
Yeah, I don't know if I agree with that it's
Okay.
his contribution that he's worried about. I think he's got a certain vision of how things should be and how he wants Jesus to be and what he wants this to be achieving.
Efficiency,
Like they've-
right?
Yeah, like they've all got an idea of what they want the Messiah to be. And he's not, and Jesus isn't living up to what he expects.
Yeah.
And he just doesn't understand. He's not got the point of it, like a lot of them, but he's just not
It's
got
a
the
bit like
point
that
of it.
middle manager that kind of comes in and sort of wants you to do things a certain way, and it
Yeah.
sometimes it's well-meaning, but also, like, I think I can't remember who says it, but it's either Jesus or one of the disciples who's like, we kind of have to live in poverty to kind of understand the uncertainty of poverty.
Yeah.
And yes, Jesus says it. Yeah.
I think I like to interpret that less as like, rather people should live in poverty and like that's okay, but rather we can't like relate to these people and give the word to these people if, you know, we've just come from like the fanciest tavern in town, having paid everyone to, you know, wash our clothes and find us food, when like we can't be so removed from our target audience that, you know, we can't go to a climate change summit in a private jet. It doesn't work, you know. So I think I would kind of Jesus frustrated by that, because like, well, it's not efficient, you know, like it's not like, you know,
it's like Judas is the representative of capitalism and big business. I don't know if I'm probably putting my own biases on that a little bit, but he wants to upscale.
It's
and
like when you have a really good little coffee shop that then becomes like a chain and it kind of loses the stuff. But it's funny because I've seen this so much with charities. It's like they're a grassroots charity, and Judas is desperately trying to upscale them into like one of the big boys that can be really effective and do. He can see all of the amazing things they could do if they can just like get more employees and get more income and get more donations, forgetting the heart and soul of what they're actually trying to do. And I have seen that with so many charities, that when they go from being a grassroots organisation to getting much bigger, the priorities start to become paying the staff and paying the CEO and paying the marketing team and having really shiny marketing, and you start to lose sight a little bit of the actual point of what you're doing. And that feels like such a
that's really interesting. So I got something different from it, and it was something that made me relate to Judas quite a lot, and I think because it's a problem I've had in the past, and I think it's a problem, if we're not careful, we might have in the future. And it's he comes in, Judas has these skills, he wants to use these ideas and skills to benefit this group that he's part of. So when I came to the church that we're in now, I was like, so I've got all this drama background, I can put on plays, we can do sketches, we can do shows, and I could never get it off the ground, if you like. I could never seem to get anyone to kind of take me seriously, and I'm like, I kind of know what I'm about here, guys, you know. And it was very frustrating. It was difficult to sort of feel like there was anywhere for you to go or anything for you to do, because it was like, well, you can do AV desk or parking team, you know. It's sure, right? And you're like, but I have all these wonderful skills that I can use to sort of to serve God. And when you look at it in that context, it becomes about you and what you have to offer, rather than what these people need and what your context needs this time. And the tipping point for me wasn't I came up with some wonderful thing and everyone thought it was great. It was my landlady was like one of the church administrators. So one of the things about running a church is there's always stuff to do. There's never enough people to do it. So when she was looking for volunteers, sometimes she'd just look around the dinner table and there I was, you know? And so I would like volunteer for cooking for Alpha and like stuff that, yes, I could do. I didn't particularly feel called to it. I didn't feel like it was me showing my best for Jesus, but it was what was needed at the time. And from that point on, I then got to use my skills. I then got to use my abilities when people know that you've got the heart of it in the right place, you know? And this is the thing that for me shifted how I saw Judas, because Judas's initial sin isn't greed, it's pride. It's I've got all these things. Why is nobody listening to me? Because I'm an intellectual. I know the right way to do this. Why are we being so parochial about it?
Yeah, I think it's also a lack of faith, because he's always worrying about the future.
Yeah,
and worrying about where the next lot of money is going to come from, and the others have sort of learned, well, Jesus always just figures it out.
They've been on the road a lot longer. They kind of have gotten used to the uncertainty of poverty, right? And it's something like coming from even from any kind of background, a stable background, to and I have no idea. I imagine if you basically threw me onto the road with no money, I would flounder pretty quickly. It must be a really difficult thing to get your head around. And it's nice that I think that Judas isn't kind of portrayed as this kind of Machiavellian guy from the start, right? It's understandable for the position that he's in, and you can kind of understand why he would do what he's done, it's not necessarily because he's like an evil guy at heart and has always kind
Yeah.
of been evil and full of sin. Do you know what I mean?
And it's when he starts to be separated from the group. He's always a little bit of an outsider because he comes in a bit later and doesn't quite gel with the rest of them in the same way. And he's got these questions and they're not being answered, and he starts sitting apart, and so he's not like connecting with the group. And that's what keeps you kind of in and together, is that connection with people, which is probably part of the reason for things like let's make our own grain for the bread, because you have to work together and spend time together and
basically a team
connect
building
with each other.
exercise,
Yeah,
effectively.
basically. And he's not engaging in that, and then the secrecy starts of putting this money aside. And if he just said like, I think it would be a really good idea if we took like a little portion of this money and maybe invest it so that we can use those resources for, I don't know, helping these people, maybe they would have been up for it. But it's the secrecy of it, isn't it, that he starts doing it without telling anybody and working on his own and thinking that he's got the best plan and that it's in everybody's interests.
Yeah, it's that pride again.
And that's where the problem really comes. Yeah.
Yeah, seeing the kind of the conflict with Matthew.
Yes.
Where, like,
Yes.
I know what, like, he's like, I've done the numbers. I was like, hang on, you just must have done that all in your head, because you didn't sit down with an abacus at any point. You like, I love the idea that Matthew is that smart, but he's just he's not going to go back to that life. You know,
I kind of love that. That I think that's a real lesson, because sometimes we can misinterpret forgiveness as this has happened with, particularly poignantly with sexual abuse cases in the church, in the past, where a priest has said like, okay, you know, they committed this sin, but we've forgiven them and everything's fine now, and they're still working with children or working with other people. It's like, no, that's not what that means. You can forgive someone, still not put them in the path of temptation to commit that sin again. And I feel like that's what's happened with Matthew. They've completely forgiven him at this point for what he's done.
Do you remember that bit where early on in the season where Matthew is saying, why has Peter not forgiven me yet? And I said, well, in the abstract, I hurt him by working with him. Like, and then Jesus is like, was it in the abstract?
Specifically, what did you actually do, Matthew?
It's like, well, I did this, and I doubled his debt, and I did snitch on him to the Romans. And it's that moment of like, and there's the beautiful thing where it talks about forgiveness is a gift.
Yeah.
And that was beautiful, and I loved both sides. That we've talked at length about radical forgiveness this season, so I'm not going to go into it in any depth. But the way Matthew says, "I'm not looking for forgiveness, but I just want you to know that I'm sorry."
Yeah.
And then the way Peter kind of steals himself, grabs him, just pulls him into that bear hug and says, I forgive you, it's over, it's forgotten. And it is.
But it takes both of them a little bit of time and soul searching to get to that point.
Yeah, and you need it from both sides, don't you?
Yeah.
You know, and that's what makes this so hard, is it's really hard to forgive somebody if they're not sorry. Yes, you can do it. Yes, it's possible, but there's forgiveness and restoration, and those two things aren't the same thing.
Yeah.
I think that pretty much wraps up our finding the faith in the film. The thing I enjoyed the most was the last words of the last episode,
that's a nice kind of heartfelt bit.
Yeah, Jesus is saying to me like, I'm going this way. You don't have to come if you don't want to. And then Peter just says, well, where else would we go? You alone have the words of eternal life.
Like,
and
what
that
else are we
bit
gonna
just
do?
as cheap. Yeah, like what you? It's like, this is the thing. You're the only game in town. You know, you're like, I'm not going to go off and worship somebody else. Come on, you know. And then Jesus says this. Well, and I don't think this is in Scripture. I think this is an invention of the of the show, where he says, "Just know that in this world, I loved you as my own, and I will love you till the end." I'm like, I'm fine. No, it's just my allergies.
And also someone's cutting onions, and also it's raining in here.
Yeah.
We were saying, weren't we? We love the portrayal of masculinity in this show.
Yes.
It's such positive masculinity.
I think
isn't it?
it's like,
really is.
for me, it's second only to like Lord of the Rings. when it comes to like positive masculine portrayal. You know what I mean?
That's a really astute point, because there's a lot of crossover between those two things.
Yeah, no, it's really lovely. I really like that it does raise the fact that the emotional side can be what makes it difficult to keep your faith sometimes. Like even Thomas, Jesus is right there. He knows who he is. He believes in him, and he knows he's the Messiah. But he's so angry with him and so upset that that's what threatens his faith. And I think sometimes sometimes believing, I know you're an atheist, but sometimes believing in God isn't necessarily the barrier. It's our emotions towards him, about like what that means if he is real.
Yeah, like we were saying earlier, especially when you know that Jesus can do this stuff because you've seen it, and he's standing right there, right now, and he won't do it. It's like when your dog is like trying to eat chocolate, and like they love the chocolate, they really want the chocolate because chocolate's great, but you're like, no, the chocolate is bad for you. So even though you're doing something like wrong and mean, it's to from their perspective, it's so that they don't die. This is like the equivalent of Jesus stopping you from eating that chocolate because it's poison and you're gonna die.
I love that.
But it's I can absolutely understand why that would shake anybody's faith, because why not? I know that you can do it, so why not? And that could,
like you get more academics in the sciences that are Christians than in the humanities, because logically, for a lot of people, Christianity and faith in God makes sense, but emotionally it doesn't always.
I think that's a really good way of putting it. Like you can think about it. Yeah, I think I'm the same, or slightly different. Like I would love to have a faith in something. I just find it rationally difficult to do. Do you know what I mean? Like I think if I woke up tomorrow and Jesus was at my door, like, hey yo, heard you were talking smack, let's go, then I can be convinced, right? But I just find that it's I don't know, like, there's just a big
hang on, is Jesus and Julia having a fight?
He came and he's flipping tables, man. I need him out of my house.
Hang on, wait, like Jesus has got the knuckle dusters out. Julia's got her spiked baseball bat.
Let's get serious.
Let's get popcorn,
But like this is the challenge that I have. Like I believe intellectually in Jesus, and I know I have a faith, but I find it emotionally very difficult sometimes. I'm like, what? Like, why do you let all of this stuff happen? That's so horrible, and it gets very frustrating. So that's the side of faith that I think most of us struggle with, and I like that it shows that in Thomas, someone that's literally there with him and is still having those struggles.
There's so much bad stuff in the world that if I wanted to not believe in Jesus, I would have plenty of evidence to back up that point. But in a world where there is such sadness and performative cruelty, I think a belief in Jesus and having hope in Jesus is punk AF, frankly.
Yeah, but I think what I'm saying is that that's what makes having that belief harder sometimes. The fact that all that sorrow and suffering does exist.
Yeah.
Because if you do believe in God and believe in Jesus, you believe that he has the power to take that away and hasn't. And that is what is incredibly hard sometimes, and that is what we see through Thomas. So I really love that they did that.
Yeah. I love the way you see him. He's there. He's still walking with them.
Yeah.
And you can see him gradually getting better. But it's not fixed overnight.
Yes.
It takes time, We talk about faith being like a roller coaster sometimes, and it shouldn't be. It should just be a nice, smooth progression from A to B, but it's more like a roller coaster.
Jesus never told us it would be, did he, to be fair? So he said it would be hard.
Anyway, that wraps up our Finding the Faith in the film. We have an actual review.
Woo!
Over on our Facebook page, we have Heather Booth has said that we are a fun and easy to listen to podcast that really makes you think. Happy birthday, God in Film podcast. Thank you so much, Heather. That made us smile so much.
Heather.
That was really sweet. And quick thank you to our patrons. James Pittard, Sal Masella, Sarah Cooper, Philip J. Coleman, Lance Kane, and one Natalie Faye Miniker. We love you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Ladies, have you had a good time?
I always have a good
just getting to spend some time with Claire is always nice. Just little
Yeah.
girl time. You know what I mean?
If you find a Claire, marry her. You know, can confirm, would marry again.
Oh,
You know,
there's only one of me, I'm afraid. I'm sorry.
until my cloning process is complete. Yeah. We don't have any episodes lined up in the pipeline next, ladies and gents. So if you can think of anything, just ping me a line and I'll give it some thought. If you have been, thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye-bye. God in Film is hosted and created by Giles Gough.
That's me.
Mixing and editing by Giles. Our logo was designed by
Julie Walsh.
And our theme tune was composed by
Rick Lee.
Please rate and review.
Please give us 5 stars because that's a nice thing to do.